Jadon Sancho is an overrated English player who made a mistake by choosing to sign for Manchester United. This is one out of a list of many discredited statements many have made about Jadon Sancho amid his current struggles at Manchester United, which even led to a World Cup snub from England manager Gareth Southgate. But is there actually truth to these statements? Sancho is an around €80 million creative winger who barely contributed to 15 goals in nearly 2 seasons after previously grabbing over 100 goals contributions in 4 seasons at his previous club. His situation at Manchester United is so bad that he seems to have forgotten how to dribble. This is a far cry from the player he once was, as he was so good that Liverpool were even contemplating risking the departure of Mohamed Salah in order to get him into the club. Jadon Sancho was so electric, so unique and incredibly captivating that he kept thousands at the edge of their seats inside of the stadium and millions glued to their seats at home. He was supposed to be one of England's next big superstars as they currently usher in a new golden generation, but now he's not even deemed good enough to follow the Three Lions to the World Cup. So was he overhyped and just simply wasn't good enough to begin with, or is it something else? Or perhaps does it have something to do with the club he chose to sign for? Or maybe a key part of his growth missing, which he might have acquired if he had chosen a different path back in 2017. Was Guardiola right about Sancho from the start? So here we go. Although he currently plays his football at Manchester United, Jadon Sancho a few years ago was actually a Manchester City player. He wasn't just a wonder kid in City's academy, he was considered as a big deal. A young player who was surely destined to break into Manchester City's first team and even their starting 11 as time went on. But the word time is the key word here, because Sancho didn't have any time to waste and wasn't prepared to stick around to wait to see if he was ever going to make it into the first team. You see, at the time, Sancho was coming up against fierce competition for a spot at either of Manchester City's flanks. Players like Raheem Sterling, Leroy Sané, Bernardo Silva and Gabriel Jesus were all viable options to play on the wing for Guardiola. Sancho, a player who was very eager to start playing first-team football, thought that with these players, the odds of him breaking into the first team as a 17-year-old and playing week in, week out was very slim. So he decided to make a decision which, in all fairness, is a huge one for a 17-year-old to make, and that was not just to move to another English club on loan, was to leave permanently to a club outside of England. Sancho needed a club that was very good with the handling of young players and would provide the biggest stage possible for them to shine without too much media pressure and attention, and that club came in form of Borussia Dortmund. The rising trend of players to move to Bundesliga clubs and succeed was enticing to Sancho. He saw how other young players from other places were so easily able to develop themselves in Germany and become world-class players. He saw how Dortmund gradually transformed Christian Pulisic to now literally America's biggest superstar at the moment, how Aubameyang became a superstar who later signed for Arsenal, how Ousmane Dembele became a €100 million signing for Barcelona, and so on. And so, there was no question on what his choice was going to be. Sancho was confident in his own abilities as a 17-year-old, and his success has now laid the blueprint for other English players like the likes of Jude Bellingham, who unsurprisingly is also tearing it right now in the Bundesliga. But was this choice his ultimate undoing? His manager at Manchester City, Pep Guardiola, is of the opinion that Sancho's move out of the club was due to his unwillingness to work hard to challenge for a spot in the team. In other words, Pep felt Sancho took the easy way out. I don't know, he didn't want to take this challenge, this opportunity to discover if he was able to. He decided to go there, so it's perfect, it's going well, and congratulations on what he is doing. Man City saw Sancho, just like Phil Foden, as the club's future, which is evident with the fact that he was offered a club record £30,000 a week wage for any academy player just so he could stay. But Sancho rejected all that so he could move elsewhere. Now, looking at it from Sancho's perspective makes it difficult to side with Guardiola here. He felt he was ready to play in the first team, and City were not looking like they were ready to give him what he wanted, because during the time he was being offered that contract to stay, City had a lot of big money signings in attacking positions, and they even recently acquired Bernardo Silva and Gabriel Jesus in that summer in which he left. Were also aggressively chasing Alexis Sanchez from Arsenal, and you could also add the fact that due to immense competition and Guardiola's tendency to change personnel across several areas in his starting 11, a lot of these players were not even guaranteed a starting spot, so you can't really blame Sancho for thinking he had no hope of getting into this side. Anyway, in the summer of 2017, Dortmund snapped him up for around £8 million, and he was also given the number 7 shirt which was previously worn by Ousmane Dembele, and so it all began. Sancho was an incredibly brilliant footballer. His dribbling, his flair, and his footballing IQ were on another level, that too as a young 17-year-old teenager. He appeared as though he was tailor-made for the club, as his chemistry and connection with the players around him was absolutely terrific. His debut against Eintracht Frankfurt in October of 2017 saw him become the first Englishman to play at Dortmund, and that season 2017-18 would see him finish with 1 goal and 4 assists in 12 appearances. His second season is when he absolutely exploded, as he spent the entire season breaking records after records. In October of 2018, he won the Bundesliga Player of the Month, a month during which his brace against Hertha Berlin saw him become the first player born after the 2000s to score twice in a single Bundesliga match, and the youngest in Dortmund's history to do so, while also breaking a similar record in the Champions League when he scored against multi-Champions League finalist Atletico Madrid to become the first player born in the 2000s to score in the Champions League. He also broke the records of the likes of Chris Wook and Lukas Podolski by becoming the youngest player to score 8 and 9 Bundesliga goals in a single season respectively, as well as breaking his club's record when he scored his 10th by becoming the youngest player in Dortmund's history to score 10 goals in a single season at the club. He soon concluded his season with 12 goals and 14 assists in 26 league matches and was named in the Bundesliga Team of the Season. The following season, which was the 2019-20, was even better. He scored 20 goals and registered 19 assists in 44 matches in all competitions, and this statistically remains Sancho's best ever season in his professional career. His incredible performances saw him finish runner-up in the Golden Boy Award, only losing it to Joao Felix. During this period, the whole world was high on Sancho, and everything got better when Dortmund decided to bring in Erling Haaland into the club. The two just instantly clicked. Haaland the goal scorer and Sancho the provider, their chemistry was unmatched by no other. They and Dortmund were like the underdogs trying to square up to Big Bayern, and this just made more and more people root for them. As Sancho was busy doing his thing, well, it all began. Bigger clubs like Chelsea, Manchester City, Manchester United, Liverpool and so on were beginning to get linked with this incredibly gifted youngster. Liverpool were even reportedly willing to let Salah go in order for Sancho to come in. Chelsea's position was made even stronger upon discovery that the Dortmund man was a Chelsea fan during his childhood, and he even has an old Twitter account which was suspected to have belonged to him, filled with several tweets in which he publicly showed his adoration for the club. The Man City link was purely based on history, and finally, the club that appeared to want him the most, Manchester United. The Red Devils, led by Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, were desperately chasing after Sancho, but Dortmund's valuation of around 108 million for the player put United off initially, as they decided to let it go for 1 more year so they could come back when he was cheaper.
Manchester United tried to sign Sancho this time last year. Borussia Dortmund wanted £108 million for him. They wanted it done by August the 10th, 2020. United said no. United said they were going to wait.
Now, this failed move to Manchester United appeared to have taken a massive toll on the creative winger, as his start to the following season was far from ideal. His shocking dip in form saw him become a target, as the German media were quick to label his situation as a crisis, along with also calling him a problem child. Now, despite all of Sancho's positive attributes, just like everyone, he had some negative ones, and one of them was coming late to training. He had this issue several times at Dortmund, and his justification for that was that he has a quote-unquote sleeping problem. This would widely be speculated as one of the reasons for his current crisis. Sancho, in truly amazing fashion, put his early season slump and went on to have a fine campaign which saw him score 16 goals and provided 20 assists, as well as scoring twice in the DFB Pokal Cup final against Leipzig. Around this period, the hype surrounding Sancho was too big for England manager Gareth Southgate to ignore, as Sancho saw himself receive a call-up to England's Euro 2020 squad. At the same time, Manchester United came back, and soon enough, they came back with £73 million, and Sancho was all theirs. The Euro 2020 tournament was supposed to be the time for Sancho to show the world what he was made of. He was meant to shine. He was meant to be one of the reasons for the championship coming home, but this turned out to be the biggest nightmare of his career. Despite being arguably the most informed winger in that team, he saw himself take the backseat for the likes of Raheem Sterling, who wasn't in the best of forms at the time, along with unproven newcomer Bukayo Saka to shine, while himself and his 40 goals contribution was relegated to the bench.
Yeah, definitely. You know, it's always frustrating not to be in the starting 11, but I knew that my chance would come. So in training, I've given it everything 110%.
As if it wasn't enough, during the Euro 2020 final against Italy, when the biggest match in the nation's recent history went into extra time and surely destined to go into a penalty shootout, Southgate had the bright idea to bring both himself and Marcus Rashford in the dying stages of the match without any proper warm-ups to play the penalties. They went onto the pitch during the shootout, and along with Bukayo Saka, they all missed their penalty kicks. The events that transpired after this is one of the most disgusting things any footballer could have ever faced. Three extremely young footballers suffered severe racial abuse, and in my opinion, Sancho's confidence never recovered after that night. This night will be the time the confidence of this once promising creative winger was dead.
Marcus Rashford, Jadon Sancho and also Bukayo Saka were subjected to online hate after failing to score their penalties.
His arrival at Manchester United was being celebrated tremendously. That was until the arrival of Cristiano Ronaldo. When Ronaldo was announced to be getting closer to signing for Manchester United, all the excitement about Sancho's transfer was quickly overshadowed by the return of one of the GOATs. But normally, this was actually good for Sancho as the expectation surrounding him was not as high anymore. But how long till that comfortable CR7 shaped blanket will be ruthlessly stripped off of him? Problem number one. Manchester United decided to give Sancho a salary of over £300,000 a week, and if you've been a long-time viewer of this channel, you already know from this video how I feel about young players getting this sort of salaries. This is just way too much money to be given a player who hasn't even proven himself at your club, not to even talk of the Premier League. The price tag and the wages set Sancho up to fail. Despite putting pen to paper in the summer, Sancho didn't score for Manchester United until November of 2021 when he netted in the Champions League against Villarreal and subsequently against Chelsea in the Premier League. But at the time, people were still considering the fact that this was still his first season at the club. But as of this season, there is suddenly nowhere to hide for Sancho. His dismal performances have been harshly criticized by ex-footballers and pundits who even labelled him as quite possibly the worst signing in Manchester United's history. With only just 8 goals and 4 assists in 1.5 seasons at the club, his situation seems to be getting worse with each passing match. People have made mention about his lack of pace, his apparent laziness, and his unwillingness to dribble or take on defenders one-on-one like he used to. Now, I don't think anyone can argue that the competition in the Bundesliga is far inferior to that of the Premier League and that the style of football is vastly different. Sancho slotted in perfectly at Dortmund because he had the players and the team chemistry with them as they played mostly as a team, but Manchester United is more of an individualistic team. They depend mostly on the magic of few players to get them results, and naturally players who come with big profiles or humongous transfer fees are usually expected to take on this role, and when they fail to do so, they get singled out. Sancho just cannot take on the role yet because he's not that type of player, or his training at Dortmund didn't condition him to be that kind of player. There is some sort of pressure that comes with playing for Manchester United, and the fact that the club doesn't have a good support system is also hindering his progress. Out of all of the 3 players to receive those racist abuse in the Euro 2020 final, Bukayo Saka is the only one who managed to recover from that, while Sancho and Rashford, who are both Manchester United players, unsurprisingly have not been able to recover. Now, he's 21, playing for one of the biggest clubs in the world. I think it's also got to do with a lot of the things up there in his head. Now, it's about the transfer to when he's playing, showing the same kind of level and performance on the pitch. Everyone expected from him that he would be one of the best players in the team. This is psychologically and emotionally a more challenging situation than the one at Borussia Dortmund. But these are exactly the kind of steps that he has to make to become a top player for the next 10 years at this club. This was Ralf Rangnick's opinion on why Sancho was struggling, as he hinted at a possible depression. He's not been able to cope with the pressure, and to be fair, seeing players around him constantly get criticized may have kick-started some sort of anxiety in him, and also a feeling that he might be next. Like the time when Marcus Rashford was booed by his own fans, when Maguire became a laughingstock who even received death threats, when Cristiano Ronaldo got a section of the fan base to turn on him despite his name being sung in the stadium a few months ago, when Pogba got disgraced out of the club. Seeing all of these undoubtedly had a negative effect on Sancho. Don't forget, he hasn't been exposed to such an environment where the tension and pressure has been this high. This is something he might perhaps have benefited from if he had stayed under the stewardship of Pep Guardiola. Pep is very good at integrating younger players into his squad. Just look at Phil Foden. Pep shielded him from all of the unnecessary hype that the English media places upon their youngsters and didn't overexpose Foden until he was ready, because he knew that that sort of exposure is not good for any kind of young player. Foden had time to learn, make mistakes and come back stronger, but with Sancho already arriving as a big shot at a very young age, accompanied with everything he has been through, he just couldn't develop the mental aspect of his game quick enough. The nature of the Premier League also played a key part in this, because as opposed to many teams in the Bundesliga, Premier League teams are usually very defensively disciplined and will mostly drop deep to avoid penetration. United have brilliant individuals, but the cohesion as a team has always been lacking. Also, the fact that Manchester United went through 3 different managers while Sancho was at the club didn't really help the situation.
He was the best player in the tournament, the European Championships, and he went past people with great confidence, he went past them with speed, he went past them with trickery. today, and when I've seen him last season, he hasn't got that about him at the moment. He wants to do it, but it's not able to do it at the moment. So he needs to get his confidence back. 1v1s, get him against a young player, you know, a reserve team player, let him go past him a few times, get crosses into the box, get shots away. But he's got to be given that confidence, because at the moment he looks though he's lacking confidence. And a player of his quality and the things he does, you need to be playing at the top of your game and playing with confidence. And he's not doing that.
Sancho desperately needed a wake-up call, and he got it in form of the World Cup snub, as he got snubbed by Gareth Southgate, admittedly deservedly, due to his lackluster performances. Ever since that World Cup snub, Sancho has recently been seen training in the Netherlands and even deleting his social media account, hinting at the possible return of the old Jadon Sancho.